It is time for us to check in with Dr. Joe Schwarz, host of the Dr. Joe Show, Sundays, of course, here at 3 o'clock on CJAD. And he is also director of the McGill Office for Science and Society. And Joe, the first thing we're going to talk about today, and I've heard this term before, the dirty dozen. So what's new here? Because this refers to foods, and in terms of contamination, in terms of, sprays, all that kind of stuff, pesticides. What's new here?
Well, it's the end of March, so I am at this time usually flooded by a slew of emails because the Environmental Working Group, which is a nonprofit organization in Washington, releases their annual list of dirty dozen fruits and vegetables that have the most pesticide residues. And this almost always starts a bit of panic, and it also influences sales. For example, this year, strawberries are number one on the list, spinach is number two, which is one of the reasons that in the stores today you can get a good buy on strawberries. They're usually cheap because the Environmental Working Group has scared people away from eating strawberries. Now, there are several things to note here. The first is that pesticides are very carefully regulated. In Canada by the Pesticide Management Regulatory Agency, in the US by Department of Agriculture and FDA.
Okay.
These things are not randomly put, on our food supply. They are based on animal studies, on laboratory studies, and human epidemiological evidence. And these regulatory agencies determine what are known as tolerance levels, or sometimes called maximum residue levels, which is the amount that is allowed on food that is believed to cause no concern. It's impossible to grow food today without the use of pesticides, whether they be conventional or organic. So obviously there is interest in those residue levels, given the fact that by their nature, obviously pesticides are toxic, right? I mean, pesticides are designed to kill insects, designed to kill weeds, designed to kill fungi. So safety is of paramount importance, and the regulatory agencies know that. Usually, the amounts that are allowed as residues are determined by the so-called NOAEL level, which is the no observed adverse effect level on animals. So what they do is start feeding animals increasing amounts until there's some toxic amount, and then they divide that by a factor of 100 for human safety, and that is the maximum that is allowed as residue. Now, the trouble that I have with this Environmental Working Group list of dirty dozen is that there's not a single number in that list. The only thing they do is they list blueberries, apples, carrots, whatever, as among their dirty dozen. But there's not a single mention of the fact that these are all well within the limits of tolerance as established by the agencies that I mentioned. So within those limits, of course, some will have more or less, but it doesn't really matter as long as they are all less than what is tolerable. So I think this is mostly a gimmick by the Environmental Working Group to get money. And indeed, when you go to you Google list of dirty dozen, it will take you to their website, and the first thing that comes up is a request for donation. So I really am not worried about this. I think the evidence is absolutely overwhelming that eating more fruits and vegetables is healthy, whether those are conventional or organic. And the fact is that there's absolutely no indication that among this dirty dozen, there are any that exceed tolerance levels. It's just that within the allowed amounts, some may have somewhat more and somewhat less.
Okay, I want to stop you there.
Totally inconsequential.
To try to understand then. So you said earlier on that even when you buy organic, right, you're still buying something that has pesticides in it, but obviously at a much lower level, because you said you can't grow anything without pesticides.
Exactly.
Right?
There's a whole list of organic pesticides that are allowed, including things like copper sulfate, which is mined, or pyrethrins, which comes from chrysanthemum, or neem oil. All of those have potential toxicity. Just because something is natural doesn't mean that it is non-toxic. I mean, that's a total myth. But the organic pesticides are regulated exactly the same way as synthetic pesticides.
Which brings me to
So,
the question then of, are
yeah.
you wasting your money buying organic, thinking you're buying healthier? Let's take in the terms of fruits, for example, anything that grows, would you buy organic?
I don't, because I think this residue issue is irrelevant. The other issue why people might want to buy organic is because of the perceived nutritional benefits. But studies have looked at that, comparing organic produce to conventional produce in terms of protein content,
Right.
in terms of polyphenol content. And you'll find studies either way. Some studies show it has more, some that less, because it actually is determined by the genetics of whatever you're growing, not by how you are growing it. Where there is some advantage to organic is in its environmental consequences, because you don't have the synthetic pesticides, which are generally more water soluble, being leached out, into natural water systems. On the other hand, you require more land to grow organic because it has lower yield. So there are issues now about clearing more land, for organic. So each one has its pluses or minuses, but I think that the dirty dozen is totally misleading. And I think anyone who now curbs eating strawberries or spinach because these are listed as number 1 on 2 on this dirty dozen list, I think they're doing themselves a disservice.
So the only other question I would ask with respect to that, then, let's say you go ahead and say, okay, I'm beginning to understand that buying organic is not a guarantee of anything. There's pesticides in there too. If you're eating the traditional ones and non-organic ones, is it then a matter, I mean, and I'm going to use a bad example, but if you ate blueberries, for example, that are on this list, or strawberries, and you ate them every day forever, like for a year and years and years and years, would it then make a difference in terms of how much you would eat?
Well, of course, nobody can really have the answers to that, because for that you would have to do a long-term study, decades long, where one group of people ate blueberries, let's say, every day, and the other group didn't, and everything else in their life was equal, which is, of course, an impossible
Okay.
thing to do. But maybe the best answer I can give you is that I eat blueberries every morning. First of all, I like them, and I think that they're healthier than eating a Danish every morning. And I have no
Right.
qualms about whether or not they appear on the dirty dozen list or not.
And I will say, for someone who is about apparently to turn 95 years old, you look amazing. So
Thank you.
I guess we have to take something from that. If Joe is eating blueberries and looks this good at that age, no, I'm kidding. But there you go. I think,
Well, you're not kidding by all that much.
No? Okay.
Maybe you're a couple of decades off, but that's about it.
But no ill effects from eating blueberries, so that's what we have to consider. Okay.
Right.
Maybe we save some people some money today who are listening to this. If you were spending a whole lot more typically for organic fruit than you are for regular fruit, maybe it's something worth considering. That's kind of what we're saying,
so.
right? Yeah.
I think if you would spend the extra money on buying more fruits and vegetables, you would be better off in the long run.
There you go. And that's where we'll leave it. Dr. Joe, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron.